Ki tō tātou wahine nā o whiringa tu ki te wāhanga o Liz Lambert. Kai kone tonu I tēnei wā, no re tuka ana me mihi a tuka ai. So I'd just like to take this time, Katrina, on behalf of the Maori Committee and the Council itself, our President, our CEO, and the councillors themselves that are here, and all our Maori members who welcome. I'm just ask Kerry where you just come from, and he said, oh, you came from Taranaki, or Ngā Motu, or
Te Ora.
Te Aotearoa. Hei reira ki te mau Taranaki tū, whakahihi ana, they stop in Mountain Taranaki. Ko tai no mai koe wangani koe tēnei tō tātou maunga Kaurānaki. So you join up with our mountain here, Kaurānaki. But no doubt it's good to welcome you here. We didn't know you, none of us knew actually you were here this morning. So it's only right that we welcome you here. And I'm sure you're right up with the game, watching all our crew go on. So without further ado, I'd just like to say welcome. No mai, wiki mai kake mai. Kia kaha tōne koe te mahi ngā mai. Be strong and vigilant in whatever you do for the reason behind. Kia noho wā te waihoki tātou. So that clears the road and journey for us as members of the Maori Committee. Mō ngā take, all the agendas that are ahead of us. And I think we're going to do the long-term planning, aren't we? We're always dealing with that. When I go to the mō tō tātou ngā te kauranga, hara mai mihi mai whakatau mai, tēnā hoi, tēnā hoki tātou katoa.
Tēnā koe te matua. I'm going to walk back to my chair with my head bowed. Nā kūnei te whakamā. And to offer my apology through the chair for being so remiss in bringing this to the notice of this committee. Koe anō ko tā koe tūki ke mihi kia koe rā, uncle. Nau nei e tūkia koe ai tēnā ngā kaupapa.
Just before, I've asked Anna to just talk to us about some scientific issues with the water. Everybody makes a mistake. I've forgotten to move the last report, so if I get someone to receive a note, the integrated catchment delivery section staff report.
Happy to do so.
Moved by Mike Hawke, seconded by Papa Bill. All in favour say aye.
Aye.
Against? Carried. So now we'll go on to Anna before we get to the next item.
Thank you, Chair. I've actually just briefly come in to possibly answer some questions or clarify some things around an issue that the Chair brought to a previous meeting with regard to shellfish water quality and the impact or levels at which it was safe for kaimoana gathering. We operate our recreational water quality monitoring program for 20 weeks over the summer period, and part of that program also looks at our popular shellfish gathering sites and collects information on faecal contaminants there. The national guidelines that we use for those, however, are not particularly useful when it comes to alerting members of the public when is a good time to gather shellfish versus a bad time, because of the fact that they operate over the season. So you take the entire season's data and then say at the end of the season whether or not shellfish gathering was okay at that site. Not very helpful for people making decisions. What we do and what we have done in our previous SOE report is we looked at the level of compliance with those guidelines at our popular shellfish sites. Mangawhio Lagoon was the one that was actually was raised at the previous meeting, and this was over the the Christmas period, where we had about 80 mils of rain between Christmas and New Year's. And I think the level at which we were talking was about 3,000 E. coli or enterococci per 100 mil. At that level, absolutely, we say it's not safe for swimming. And any time that it's not safe for swimming, I would also suggest, and this is not based in the guidelines, that it's not safe for the collection of kaimoana. I'd also say that to avoid the collection of shellfish following heavy rains, that's when all the faecal contaminants can come down. Shellfish tend to bioaccumulate them as they filter, and then it takes a while for them to depurate them or release them out of their system before they get eaten, and people can become sick from that. We will be working, particularly with mahinga kai becoming a compulsory value under the MPSFM, we will be pushing for a central government look at maybe some more useful advice around the collection of kaimoana species and faecal contamination. The current guidance is based on a 1956 circular, and it's based on export quality shellfish. So what we would like to be able to do is operate on a more reasonable recreational sort of setting and say, look, what is the advice we can give to people to help them make better decisions around when and where to collect kaimoana. So I hope that offers a little bit. There's no sort of level at which we say it's no good. However, if it's no good for swimming, I would absolutely say take that as it's no good for the collection of kaimoana either. This is particularly around shellfish because you eat the whole fish, not so much around fish species which are gutted. So for faecal contaminants, they'll go in the gut, and if you gut them, you'll be able to remove it. There is also, that's faecal contaminants that come off the land. You also get marine biotoxins, which is similar to blue-green algae or cyanobacteria. It's a naturally occurring thing, blooms at some times, and MPI are responsible for that, and that's where we'll get those closures to shellfish collection through parts of the bay or large tracts of the bay. In some of those, the liver as well is a problem, but you'll see MPI will give guidance as to which parts of fish are able to be eaten or not. So that was pretty much more around the faecal contaminant side of it.
So if MPI put up a sign, they're really quite contaminated?
So MPI won't put signs up. They will make alerts around closures for biotoxins. However, the District Health Board, in conjunction with ourselves, will put signs up if an area is has ongoing issues or persistent issues. For example, Mangawhio Ahuriri is another one. The Ministry of Health don't recommend collecting kaimoana from areas where there is urban influence. And we know that that's not necessarily helpful. We know people do still like to go and collect, so we try to offer advice as to really when to avoid. So that is following that 2 to 3 days, not 2 to 3 days for shellfish, but following heavy rain, at least a week to 10 days, I would say, and that's just a guesstimate.
And I suppose it's good to ask you, there was a contamination. I know I was sitting in this meeting and we know potentially who the perpetrator. I did talk to Naiui because we had our kutai dive, which we put in our report, and then we delayed that a week to allow for that paru to go out before we done the dive, just so we weren't giving whānau contaminated mussels in there. And I suppose the interaction with yourself, if you manage it, because obviously we've got a group with MPI now and we're doing with our customary kaitiakis, and I sit on that governance group and we're looking at how are we more effective, working in that space when we issue customary permits. So I suppose somehow if we connect you with MPI and then a part, potential the regional councils are part of that committee, because it goes up to Mahia. We've got Koratapu and Robin Happy from Pahuera, they co-chair that board, and it's around, because I write a customary permit, so I'll write a customary permit out for someone to dive in that area, but if I'm aware that there's contamination, obviously I wouldn't write the permit out. But yeah, it'd be good to interface that with MPI.
That's a really good point.
Would you be a link, or
yes,
who would
please.
be the link?
Yes, please.
Get your card in.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Because it's all about the health of our whānau.
Mm.
The mahinga kai is not good for them to eat. And, we need to be aware of that. And James did talk about having a bit of maybe having permanent signing that talks about if there's a rain event, don't swim and don't collect shellfish from the kaimoana.
And obviously the cause, because that would be, for me, if there's paru in the water, tracing that back to who's the polluter and causing that. And I did say in the meeting when it said possibly Takitima, I said, well, they're no different to anyone else. If they cause the pollution, then they've got to be accountable for that. So I'm just saying, if there's a pollution and it's coming from industry, then obviously they need to be held accountable for that.
Absolutely. That is, however, a different part of the organisation. It's subject to investigations, which means under and Katrina would probably be a better put for this, but we have to be quite careful about how we respond to things like that because it may actually interfere with the investigation side of it. But we would certainly put it out that there would be a time or a period where it was unsafe. I think that's a great idea about if we do try to get a central government steer on shellfish collection and faecal contaminants, that it would be great to make those linkages in so that we've got that not only going through ourselves through LAWA website but also through the permit holders as well. One thing with regard to signposts and the swimming water quality post-rain, we have an issue with sign fatigue where people become so familiar with the sign that they do not see it anymore. And this is, we try to work really heavily on that consistent messaging through all of our comms, through all of our releases, about trying to stay out of the water 2 to 3 days following a rainfall event.
It's a nice, simple, clear message, but our sign at Mangawhio would be good, better than no sign at all. Especially at that time of the year, just before New Year's, with the numbers in Mahi as well, and everybody's using it. That I know that from being a child, that was the place where you went if you went to Mahi. You really got some pippies, you were sure of the feed, and it was a good place to swim for kids. So yeah, I mean, our sign is better than no sign, but it's just about a basic message.
Particularly the shellfish gathering at Mangawhio, I'll follow up on that because it's never complied with national guidelines, so it should be signposted that it's not appropriate for shellfish collection.
It's even happening in Whangawehi, and that's another, that gets the kina and the pāua and everything as well. So, I'm just really concerned, and that's happening in Ahuriri, it's happening everywhere. But it's just, thank you for your kōrero and something for us to note. And I think there's action following through with that.
Mare Apatu also had a part in his paper. Did you want me to talk to that?
There was in the report, Pakiwa report.
It was just over recreational usage of waterways throughout the year rather than just in that summer period, and whether or not recreational survey funded through Te Mamaoti may be appropriate, I think, was the gist of the paper. We do have state of the environment monitoring, which operates monthly over those winter periods as well. So while recreational water quality is targeted to the times where you get the majority of people using the waterways, we still have very good levels of information around our waterways through all the other times of the year. And with the tables from the National Policy Statement for Freshwater Management being able to grade them, it should be able to provide some really good advice as to what the current state at least is, and through our plan changes what the desired state will become.
Are you talking about in the biodiversity over here? Because I don't think there's any up-to-date data on biodiversity. So if we look at, I don't know, Moa, Tūraukiri, there's no specific reports being done on the biodiversity of those areas, is that correct?
Sorry, the part that I'm referring to is recreational usage, so E. coli, enterococci, faecal contaminant levels over those winter periods, because recreational water quality focuses on the summer period. The swimming, but our State of the Environment Freshwater Program still has those E. coli, enterococci and ability to assess them according to the National Objectives Framework for recreational use. So we're still able to provide a level of information around the health of the waters for recreation over those winter periods as well.
Where will we find it,
through our latest State of the Environment reports for each of the catchments.
Because it's not like LAWA, you can go to a site and it tells you. But then I'm thinking about, when you're duck shooting or when you're white baiting, I fall in the river when I was white baiting. So, oh my God, is that...
And I suppose long term, as we go through this and then we look at because just with the new legislation that James mentioned earlier, and then we're looking at the health of the river, obviously we'll need to do a snapshot of what's there, so then we can measure that in the future. Because I know you're talking about a different subject, but obviously if you don't know what's there, how do you measure the effects in the future? And with the change in legislation now, recognising the importance of conservation values is something that we may need to do.
So in the State of the Environment Monitoring Program, they do look at macroinvertebrate community index, so that's all your bugs and critters that live in the riverbed, and they'll assess that there's a level at which you get it, that it's in excellent health, right down to poor health. So that's one measure for biodiversity that's included. We also look at fish usage, and we're starting to use new and novel techniques like eDNA, which will allow us to better estimate what is using the system. So absolutely, we are looking to quantify the biodiversity and look at the health of systems using that biodiversity as well.
Thank you very much, and thanks Anna for giving that little time. It's very informative.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to our reports from Regional Council and committee meetings.
Well, I can probably, the paper we should take as it's read.
Yep.
But in doing so, to acknowledge the various members from this committee who sit as representatives in each of our council meetings as outlined in the paper. So if there are any questions or discussion points on the paper, happy to receive those.
My only thing from the economic side is, and it's just around, I suppose, the economy, the Maori economy, and then I suppose it's good for us because the Maori, just with some of the research I did, the Maori economy is growing faster than the New Zealand economy. So they predict 60 billion. So I suppose as a player for Maori with a player within the current economy, obviously would be, Māori's growing, whether it's through PSGs, Ahi Whenua Trust, there's a potential growth at this stage, and it's looking positive moving forward. So I suppose we can take heart from that as a committee, that the Māori economy is great, and addressing some of the other issues that I suppose councils in that face in regards to employment and water and that. So we're able to resource, or iwi or PSG's able to resource some of those activities now, whereas in the past they may have been limited.
Housing strategy, a good example of the point.
Yeah, it's good with the Māori economy growing and then meeting some of those other social implications. Good.
Rick.
I'd just like to thank the authors of this report and say it's a significant enhancement of this committee's work. It pushes things along really well, and shows the reach of the committee into what the council's doing, reports and so on. I just think it's a really, really good addition. Great, thank you.
I'd probably like to add something in here. I mentioned it earlier. There was the Integrated Environment and Integrated Catchments Committee the other day, and saw the presentation for whangawehi, and also it was followed by, and I see it's not mentioned in the report here, but it was followed by Guardians of Ruakaturi. As the chair of Te Horongonga Awa, the mana whenua, we're a treaty partner on behalf of that mana whenua there, which is Te Reinga and Iripiti whānau, and I did ask my trustees and the marae whānau there, the hapu, some of the substantial Māori land and corporations, if they had been approached on this kaupapa, and the answer was no. I've received also a complaint from Rongomawanui Trust regarding whangawehi and the engagement of the treaty partner there. So the 7 kāhui within we're the only structure like this in New Zealand. We have Tātou Tātou Te Waro, but it's made up of 7 kāhui. And when it comes to those particular areas, the treaty partner of that kāhui, that's if there's anything to do with mahi agriculture, Rongomawanui Trust, pertaining to that area, the Horongonga Awa Trust, and we haven't been approached at all. And you've got significant Māori land and corporations in that particular area. Tauwhare Toi was talking to the chair of that trust. He hasn't heard anything, and he's right next to Te Reinga. Pohatu Roa, Remu Roa. We make up over 60% of the Māori land, the landowners in Wairau, and this is the first time we've heard of them. And I noticed there was a statement that 95% of the community supported their project, and that also that the name is the Guardians of the Ruakaturi. It's probably, that's a little bit worrying as well. I'm not against anybody planting trees, fencing off their stock. I'm not against that. But you can't make the statement that you have tangata whenua support when you don't.
Kia ora.
I just need to let be clear because they're asking for significant input of funding from Hawke's Bay Regional Council, and I don't sit on that committee, so Northern Catchments wasn't there. I couldn't speak to it, and Roger wouldn't have known, that's given the name about our area. So there's a particular issue there for
But we
Wairau.
would need to address that, wouldn't we?
So I can sort of add some commentary to this. So we received two presentations, one in terms of whangawehi and what's happening up there, and the other one was from the Guardians of Ruaki Tui. And in particular, the presentation was from Nuku Hatfield, who was talking about what her and her husband and other community members have initiated in terms of fencing and other riparian responses up there. And it was a plea or a bid in some way, a proposal to HBRC in terms of supporting that initiative, not unlike the whangawehi one, and also to indicate that they would be approaching PGF for additional funding in response to that. So a presentation from the community. It was a great initiative. Unfortunate about the naming and the connotations of that, and perhaps there's an opportunity for me, because I have Niku Hadfield's email address, to make some connections.
But that should happen before. It should be done after the event. So anything, and PGF, when you put in your application, you've got to show engagement with tangata whenua because they've got to be part of the process. So the process is quite, it's a process you need to go through when you go through PGF. So yeah, you'd think they would have picked that up a bit prior to the application.
Can't talk to PGF.
Yeah.
But at PGF, they also have to show was there tangata whenua support and engagement. And who checks that,
So just in response to that one, what I can do is Nathan's our relationships manager as part of Māori Partnerships in the Wairau area, and I'll ask Nathan to follow up on this and create those discussions in relation to
I think it'd be
that.
wider if we could, can we look right across the region to make sure that anyone else ain't slipping through the cracks as in all these organisations now being set up, because I know we've been approached and we've declined some because, well, no, we're not just a matter of signing our name on a document and jumping on board the organisation. We need to know what it stands for and all the rest. So there's a number of, and I think we said earlier in the meeting, there's all these organisations being set up, and as Māori committee members, a lot of our members have been asked to join these committees, but I know we're saying no to a lot of them because they haven't, when you ask for the mission, these values, the objectives, what are they going to do, they're very light. But then they come through to the council and they've bypassed us. I'm just saying, how do we manage that for the future?
So I think I'd pick up a point and reiterate it from what our Chair of Regional Council, Reeks, indicated earlier, and that is where HBRC are primary as a party inside any of these programs, then we would work with mandated legal authorities and those others, such as this committee here. So where we're a primary partner in that process, yes. But that doesn't mean that we're initiators in all of these programs that start up within our region.
And we're not laying blame. All we're saying is with so many groups starting now and wanting Māori involvement, there needs to be a process where we can say, yes, this has been ratified and there is support, rather than the example just given where there's no support and the group's gone through without any recognition from mana whenua or tangata whenua.
And I do understand too, Papa Bill, when whangawehi first set up as Catholic Matu, she was involved in it. There was tangata whenua involvement, and that was pre-settlement. So now we're post-settlement. It's definitely got to refer to that specific car.
And as an example, that's happening in mainstream government, because we've been having those discussions about some engagements and they're restructuring how they do their process. So it's not just not happening here, I think it's happening across government as well, when some of the engagement has been a little bit light and people have signed off. So we're having those bigger conversations outside the regional council as well. So I think, and we're just trying, I suppose, put value in the partnership relationship and potentially cut down on the workloads, because as we said, all the people putting a lot of demands on the members to join, but you need to look at, well, hey, where's your values, what's your kaupapa for Māori engagement in there? Just, that's me.
To complement I'm just aware that no one wants to increase the level of paperwork. However, I just think in this particular case, because I was on the committee and had no idea that the home people that there was issues. So we just take the presentation as it's presented to us. However, if the agenda went out to people and non-members of the committee could just scanned it and said, look, that's a red flag there, can you tell us what that's all about? Otherwise, we just go blind into what is the agenda without thinking about the wider relationship, because that's not our job, is to figure out what the wider relationships are. But we could inadvertently be part of disquiet amongst tangata whenua because we just don't understand all the implications to some of those reports we're getting in that particular sense.
Yeah, if I had seen it, because I'm not in that committee, it's only, I was told after the hui had taken place, and so I had to try and catch up. So otherwise I would have contacted.
No, it's just how to remedy this, that's all. Yeah.
Chair, if I may, I think there's a useful suggestion from Roger just around agenda management. I mean, we put an awful lot of time and planning into agenda management, with the exception of the occasional outside speaker that requests to address a committee. And I think in future we could have more liaison with those parties in advance to understand what it is that they're bringing on the day and ensure that those sort of issues have been appropriately managed. We tend to leave them to it. They turn up. We had absolutely no idea what was going to be presented on the day, and so we were as surprised as anybody else. And certainly my preference is that we have sort of tighter control over our agendas. As the guardian of the Pūtea, having people walk in and ask for $700,000 of council money and provide a compelling presentation that hasn't been through all of our normal budgeting processes, all of our prioritisation through our staff who work in the region, that sort of thing, makes me feel uncomfortable. But I recognise also that we do want to have an open door to the community as well. So we'll take it away and reflect on this case and look what we can do more proactively around those sort of speaking requests in the future. Yep.
Yeah, Chair.
Rick
James is right. I mean, we probably we should ask people when they want to come. Have you Have you talked to local mana whenua? We probably need to get that right. But those people that was a surprise to me. But it was a really really good presentation, and they were really really into what they wanted to do. They just want to fix up their particular part of the river. And I think that we should contact them, Petty, and say, it would be helpful to them if they talk to local mana whenua up there, because I'm sure they would. I mean, there was nothing malicious about them. They were really passionate about what they wanted to do. They just got a few things wrong. But, you've got to take it to the community. Most of the community, I'd say 90%, don't even know that the RPC exists. So... it's really hard. I talked to some older people yesterday about it. It's really hard to get to the community what's going on because they don't read the paper anymore because it takes 2 minutes and it costs pensioners a lot of money. It's really hard to get the message out there. Most people don't really know what we do here or how we do it or how we want to do it in the future. So I think we've got to be a little bit forgiving of those people because they were quite wonderful what they wanted to do. And we can help them, Petty, I think.
Could you find yourself in the courts over that?
No. Can I just be the sort of black hat on this conversation? Be sort of on the other side of it. When James talks about doing more vetting and reviewing, etc., well, that's staff time. So we're going to go through the budget again, look what we can chop out, and by this very conversation, we're talking about adding something else in. So there's that. The second thing is that I'm really still trying to get in my head what is the issue or the problem here. A group of people appeared before us, said they'd carry on the work that they'd done before, been here before, earned awards nationally and internationally, and they wanted to continue their work in the same vein. They came up to support us for that. So what is the issue with this? Should they have permission from others, and if so, on what basis? they're just continuing to do the things that we've all said is outstanding before. I'm struggling to get the point here.
I think it's around engagement and partnership and recognising the te tiriti, and that's part of the process. And yeah, it's a wonderful project, and I agree, yeah, that's good, they've done it for a number of years, but still as a treaty partner, Māori has a right to be engaged. And as we go through the new changes in the legislation, obviously that'll be cases where it's tested. I agree, and there would be no issue, I think, from there, and it's in Wairoa, but it's still around that partnership and engagement with mana whenua, tangata whenua.
I think
in my
it's the statement that was made, and I don't believe that was true. When I spoke to the lady.
Whangawahi, and there's the other one.
Yeah,
I was talking about the
I'm
other
talking
one.
about the ruakaturi.
Yeah, I'm talking
Because that's
about
the
that too.
first time I've heard about it. And
Oh, that
never-
one, you talk about that?
Ruakaturi, not whangawehi.
Not Whangawehi.
Whangawehi
Well, I was
is
just trying to
another-
figure out, what was the problem with Whangawehi? I just like,
So perhaps, Chair, I could probably wrap this up because it's work that we could undertake through Māori partnerships. Nathan will make some connections. I think the point that you've made here is this assumption about guardians of Ruakituri. And as a matter of courtesy, it would have been good for them to have spoken with some of the local tangata whenua, such as Te Hononga Ngāwa. I think in the broader scheme, and coming off your point, Peter and Roger, is that I think it wouldn't be burdensome, I think, to be able to cast an eye over incoming agenda items on our Māori committee. Kia ora.
Much appreciated. Because I like that project, Ocean Beach, and they involved some of the Māori landowners there, and it's ka pai and that. So that shows that there's engagement. But yeah, that's all, just having a little bit of a...
Okay, Lady Chair?
Yeah.
I'd like to compliment on what she said about whangawehi. How the meeting was called at Kaiuku, and there was about 300 there. Because they didn't know where they were going to go with their fences or where they were going to plant. And they signed. The farmers signed as well as a memorandum of understanding. And then they approached me as I was chairman of the Maori Committee, which is the authorising authority for Maori. And so I said, well, I can't sign it because we haven't had a meeting. So they put me off, but they still went ahead with that sign, and then they invited me back to the next meeting. By that time, I had a meeting with the committee, and they agreed to sign it. So that was the process there. But this last one, they want to put a bike up, and you probably heard about it, around it. That's going on to private land. And the persons responsible came to Te Rā, and they thought that, I think they thought that I was still the chairman, but that has been passed over to Paul Ratapu, and went away that everybody's okay, and signed it. So now the others are saying, how did they get permission to do that bike road? And the finance has been granted, of course, and so they're having another meeting on Saturday. But I think that's the only way to do it, is to clear the air. And with the bike one, the whangawehi, as you know, the whangawehi is from the sea to a few rocks, where the Bishop Pompelia came and blessed every place, and only blessed up to those stones. And so that's the whangawehi. The whangawehi got it from the Māoris that were there. They were saying, we've already been baptised, but what is this coming up? So, kei te whangawehi tātou, hence the name whangawehi. Now, from there on is the Pāraki way, and that got from Wera Hauraki, who had his pā there beside the river. And that becomes very debatable and argumentative too, about going into the pā site, destroying it. After all, you all know that Wera Hauraki saved Kahungunu.
I just got to move us along because we've got those 10 maida, and thank you for that. Papa he was telling me as we were driving through, it was really interesting. So if I just get somebody to receive a note, their reports for regional council and committee meetings. Get somebody to move that, please.
Yep.
It was moved by Peter, seconded by Papa. All in favour say aye. Against. Carry. That'll have my. The next one is significant organisation activity. 2021. Any comment on that? Any questions for our staff?
Oh,
someone like to move the report?
Happy to do so, Madam Chair.
Mike Paku, seconded by?
Second.
By Paula Shasta. All in favour, say aye. Carried. Oh, we're moving along quickly. Okay, February 2021 statutory advocacy update.
February 21. Will you come on, Rick?
Another report?
Again, Chair, we'll take it as read and happy to answer any questions.
Any questions on that? Carl?
I just got one just in relation to the changes that have come out. You mentioned it before, new legislation and statutory requirements. So we're in a period of change, and then obviously as new legislation kicks in, obviously it'd be most probably it'd be about reviewing, just seeing what the current status is for how things are going to roll out. So obviously with the announcement James made earlier, there's big changes coming up. So just everyone mostly just needs to be aware of that. Yep.
Mike, did you? Oh,
I'll just
sorry.
add to that, Peter's point is very good. The EICC committee's asked to have at its next meeting a broad outline report what the environment's going to be like going forward with legislative changes, government expectations and so on. And I think this committee would find that very useful to have as well, because there's big moves on. I think we all need to see the big picture rather than just see little chunks here and chunks here. So I think you look forward to that report.
Oh, cool. Thank you. And Mike?
Mine's more of a question. Does the Maori Relationship Group cast their eye over the resource consent applications, or do they just automatically come out to us?
Yes, we do. We receive them every morning about 5 a.m. So we do cast an eye over them in terms of those that are significant.
Some more questions. So we had somebody to move that we receive and note the February 2021 statutory advocacy update staff report. We move. We're getting tired. We've got someone coming in at 1:30, so I'll move along. So someone can move the report, please.
Yep.
Up here, seconded by Papa. All in favour say aye. Against, carry. Okay, so we've got 2 discussion on minor items not on the agenda, so we've got 10, you've got 2 minutes each. Let's see how fast you can go.
Oh, yeah,
At least 2 minutes. The first item is white baiting upping.
Okay, I'll just hand these sheets, just take one copy please, each.
The humble white baiter.
You need to read, but I'm going to take the liberty just to quietly read. It won't take me too long, but it's more than just the humble white beta concerns our river. Okay, so just one copy each, and when everyone's got a copy, let's start.
Back.
Okay, kia ora whānau, Lady Order. Okay, so as we know, with the COVID-19 pandemic arriving on our shores in early 2020, we have witnessed the extraordinary support from the government, local agencies, businesses, community and iwi groups and the multitudes of volunteers and essential workers fronting up daily to care and feed the elderly and needy. We witnessed the serious floods in Ahuriri, making hundreds homeless, and once again all those support groups banding together to help all those at risk. One could say that these are all strong acts of human compassion, demonstrating kind-heartedness, consideration and goodwill. In November 2020, following these unbelievable acts of kindness throughout the country, and especially in our region, the Hawke's Bay Regional Council issued orders to white baiters to dismantle their stands forthwith without any discussion and or former warning whatsoever. Some white baiters have fished on our rivers for decades, and their stands along our rivers are part and parcel of New Zealand psyche, portraying our unique culture and history. I have a white bait stand on my property that I use all year round to launch kayaks for kids' holiday programs. The kids also fish and eel from the stand. Under the Regional Council bylaws, I would be required to pay $2,000 to apply for consent to have a permanent structure. I have recently inspected a number of stands along the river known as Clive, and believe me, one does not have to be a rocket scientist to see how the stands that are built into the riverbank, which are actually helping to ease erosion big time. And once dismantled, immediate and widespread erosion will occur. My recommendation, as a Māori rep on the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, I ask our regional councillors to initiate a working party, a working group, to work with our Māori committee in a true partnership to address the above-mentioned concerns. I thought I'll just slip this one in.
Good one, Dave.
Furthermore, local iwi are demanding a change to the name Clive River to Ngāreroro Moko Tuararo ki Rangatira. The name Clive comes from Major General Robert Clive, the Lord of Bengal, who slaughtered thousands of Indigenous Indians to forcibly rob them of their worldly wealth, all for the sake of the East Indian Company and British Empire.
Yes, Sahib.
Rex, this last paragraph, I'm asking the council's support and this moving forward. I presume we need to also send a message to the Hastings District Council and whoever makes the changes to our names.
Geographic Board.
Okay, cool.
Thank you, P. Next item, chemical spillage Ahuriri Estuary, Peter.
Yeah, and sorry, I just got an email from our earlier, last night or sometime, from our CA just saying, hey, she wanted a report in regards to that spill, and then obviously some more information in regards to the effects on Te Whangarei within the Ahuriri Estuary, because there's obviously since major contaminant being put into the estuary. So I need to raise that. Obviously, if we get a report, then we can put it to the board. Yep.
Thank you. And your next one is Pakura Tahi Awa.
Oh yeah, and then we just had some whānau members that raised that, and obviously Hiniuru, Pahuwere, they've all bought orchards and they're all developing out that area out by what they call the Pimple, out by Tongoy and Marae. And then obviously there's been some kōrero in relation to the blockage of the mouth that goes out there, and then how that can be remedied with the development that's happening in that area, and the communities commenting that's flooding that area. So they asked if I could raise that question as well. So maybe a response back at some stage, James, in regards to that would be great. Yep.
Thank you. Economic development.
Yeah, and maybe, and I touched on it before, it's just around the Māori economy, and that's how it's building. And I was asked by another member that whakapubs to Whangarei, because he's been asked to make a media comment in regards to his comments on the regional council, and he has made us, we was going to make a statement, but yeah, it was just in regards to what the regional council is doing with the economic planning and that, and then how that affects Māori. And yeah, I sort of had a look at some of his briefing, and he talks about the economy and the Māori being actively engaged in the economics within the Hawke's Bay region. So it was a direct comment to, must have been an article that was put in the paper, and the reporters asked him to comment. I thought it would raise it, because I think he is going to comment.
Thank you. And the next one is Karewerewan, Mike Paku.
Yes, so as we would have seen from the paper, the kara rewarewa in regards to its the drying up of the stream bed. So in the space of a little over a week, we went from swimming to a dry bed. And I kind of liken it to a bathtub where the water's turned off and the plug is pulled. It just went that fast. So quite clearly, for me, there must be an issue around the Karamu catchment area and a management plan surrounding that as part of the problem. It won't be the whole problem, but it will be contributing to the problem because you can't drain. It's impossible, to me, it would have been impossible to actually turn a stream bed from swimmable in the space of 10 days to completely dry. So something's going on there. And I think we've touched on part of it in and out of our conversations today. Management, the management of the catchment area, water use, over allocation, all of those things. I think it's a combination of things. But this is an ongoing area, ongoing problem. It doesn't help when we're trying to have conversations with the mana whenua back in those areas about what the work of the regional council is, because their reality is what they see. That's their reality. Sure, I'll leave it at that.
Sure, thank you, Mike. And the next one is Paora with the Porongahau.
It's all been said. That's exactly what's going on at home. And I'm going to do something about it. I've got it on a board so I can find out what it is. We'll walk all over those rooms, I hope.
Find the plug.
Find the plug. But, it's not hard to work out that all the water's been
In
taken.
one of the reports, they said council's going to have a drone team, and they're going to fly the drones over and check if there's, I don't know if the water, like plug, analogy, just find out what's happening to those streams while they're drying up. I don't know. I'm just asking the question. What solution? No, because the question's been asked. So what's the solution to identify who's potentially taking all that water out of the stream? I don't know.
Just on that point, there's a case in point. The Porongahau moved the water from a catchment dam up in the hills to down the beach, where they thought there was an endless supply of water for drinking back to the village. Well, they're now questioning one of those wells. So something's happened to the endless supply of water. And I can tell you this, they're just not 5k down the road, there's one of those swinging arms that goes from here for a couple of 300 metres, going backwards and forwards and round and round. It's not hard to work out what's going on.
And isn't legislation that community demands for household, isn't that the priority for water, not the economics? If the community's not getting enough drinking water, then obviously that overrides any other requirements in relation to delivery, isn't it? So that...
An obligation of Te Manatoa.
That's only just coming into force, isn't it?
I'm sorry, I didn't mention it before, but Roger, you did have a couple of items in our pre-meeting, and I don't think it came up during the hui today. He did Aroha he did ask about, he has a kōrero on water consents and gravel extraction.
Yeah.
And I don't think you bring it up today. So.
Yeah, this won't take long. I just want to ask that the Regional Council run a workshop at home on consents and water allocation. It overlaps with what Paul was just saying, but we need to have, when I said we, the marae leaders, the tai whenua, need to have a forum for which we can discuss these sort of things knowledgeably. And until we have that background knowledge, then we can't have a more advanced discussions on water security and other things. So I'm asking that the Regional Council come down home and run a workshop on water allocation and water consents.
And was there anything about the gravel extraction at all?
You just leave it at that for now, thanks.
Good point. Next one is local election, that was Heneboy.
Kia ora. So we talked about the 22 elections, and one way to build, I suppose, Māori capacity in these governing positions is a wānanga that Councillor Baden-Barber and myself are running. It's called Winning Local Elections Wānanga Series. The first wānanga is on the 26th and 27th of March at Pukimoki Marae. So we have created a Facebook page called Winning Local Elections Wānanga Series that you can join. There's a registration form there. And it focuses around how to run a successful campaign and be a good candidate. We will have national presenters, politicians from a local and a national level attend. And it is a how-to guide. So we have put the karanga out there. It's a non-for-profit sort of exercise. It's bipartisan, so waiho tō kara tō pāti ki waho. And it's all about running for the 22 elections, focus mainly at our Māori and Aotearoa So that's that wānanga happening. The second minor item is around all the activity happening out at Waiōhiki. So we were fortunate to receive the Marae Renovation Fund through the PGF of $375,000 to complete our marae. And Gemco, our building company, will be off site mid-March. We will then spend about a month dressing. But next month we will send the invitation out to everyone for our opening, which will be definitely this side of this year. So that's something to look forward to as Ngāti Pāro Hapu. A part of what we're doing up at the marae is our Kaitiaki Rangers course. So that is an initiative from our Ngāti Pāro Hapu Trust to Waimodi Trust that was successful in the PGF Jobs for Nature Fund that employs and trains 12 hapu members around fencing our waterways and also riparian planting. So we've just started building on our marae site that workspace and that compound to start a nursery, a native tree nursery. What else is happening at Waiōhiki? We also had a papakainga opening, Te Hiri papakainga, at the end of last year. The opening of 5 whare, which brings Waiōhiki to a total of 20 papakainga whare in the last 6 years, with another 4 along the way. So there is a lot happening for Ngāti Pāro Hapu out at Waiōhiki, and this is us being responsible kaitiaki and doing what we can. So kia ora.
Just a part-time, have we got a date for the wānanga?
The wānanga is the 26th and 27th of March. I'm right, the Friday and Saturday.
And the opening?
The opening invitations will come out with a date next week. Council. Oh, dear.
Oya.
Yes, sorry.
So I've got 2 minutes. So I've always greatly envied the carvings as you enter the Wairoa City Council, and I've always advocated for the last 4 years to try and get this little foyer here in carving similar to Wairoa, or uniquely, of course, representing everybody. I had a conversation with the prison guys, because they did the one in Hastings, and I don't know if you've seen the one that's been gifted to Hastings, but it's pretty sensational. I just had a general talk to them, but I was really keen whether to get the Māori committee or the RPC, but probably the Māori committee, to whether they could help me get this over the line. I know it's complex. I've talked to a few of my Māori mates, and they said, there'll be some hapu that'll be very reluctant to do that for the Hawke's Bay Regional Council, but if we can overcome some of the politics, and I think it would send a signal to our community about partnership and about the way forward. So I just want to put on the table that I'm really keen to activate that. And if I could talk to your co-chairs, that would be a good thing.
Probably the first put forward mana whenua, anything like that. That's my suggestion anyway. Go to the right people.
And have the right carvings on that.
Kia ora.
And just to add to, I didn't put it in my report, but because I put carvings up on my whare, on Otata, and we had an opening, so we've put some po up there, and that in recognition of Tūdau Whā and Ngāti Mahu. So they said they can't live in the air, but everyone walks up the hill, so they were stopping and said, you need to put up some signage now, so because as people do, they walk and they look and they, what's the background? So yeah, it's good, and a lot of people walk and like you're saying, a lot of, I'm saying non-Māori are interested in the whakapapa and the kōrero, so it was a great thing to do.
I know, just a comment, I know when Lei Tamahua the Ngā Pau Heretaunga, one of the, I don't know if they've done, I haven't been to the Pau for a while, but he was talking about putting the QR code down the bottom.
Not as yet.
You could just go on hit.
Not as yet.
Anyway,
Coming.
5 years now. So it was always his intention that you could go onto there, that all the mahi was already done, and then you could find out what that pay was all about what Maori represents the whakapapa.
What's that tai
Probably
whenua
something
here?
similar.
Whanganui-a-rotu.
Oh, yeah, right.
We could bring it into 2021 so that the mātauranga isn't lost and people understand what it was covered. Thank you. And I think the consent workshop there, you just bring that up before, didn't you?
Sorry?
Yeah.
Because I had you on again, but I think that's what we just spoke about. You spoke about before. And that's us.
Madam
I
Chair,
think.
I need to table my letter. Table it.
The
I don't need to
minor
table it.
items.
Can I also,
I've given her a
That's
copy.
bad.
on behalf of this committee, James, am I able to arrange a public meeting concerning the issues of baiters? Can I organise Hui maybe at Clive, there's that name again, Clive Hall? And while we're there, we might even consider changing the name while we're having a public hall.
Look, I need to come back to you, Api, about that. I mean, obviously you can organise any meeting you like, whenever you like, but in terms of the regional council having an engagement with the community over this, there's something that I'd just like to step back and think about. I think I love the idea of setting up a working party of councillors to throw this to councillors, because it's a right can of worms as a set of issues, and I'd like councillors to resolve it rather than
We
me.
can organise one and, then we'll keep, you might turn up anyway.
On the name change, can I suggest that when the report is done to council, that the suggestion of a name change be highlighted that at that point, council can decide whether it wants to make it an issue or not, because it's something to go to the geographic board.
Yeah.
And I have to say, I have every sympathy with the case. So I always pronounce it now Cleve, just to try
I think with respect to the settlement itself, we'd leave that to the district council, but with respect to the river, I think that is very much our concern.
That's right.
And I think there's obviously long-standing concern about the naming of the renaming of the Ngāti Clive. So that's something worthy of council consideration.
That's why I said just who's writing the report, can make sure it's put in the report, and then when we see it, we know what it means. We can then, councillors can then pick it up and make into a decision either if they wish to.
Sure.
I'm indicating I'm very happy to do that.
Thank you. And before we're going into public excluded, if we could remove that first or do the correct word?
You're removing the public excluded and do the cut.
Okay, if we can move, I'll get someone to move that we go into public excluded because we're going to turn the cameras off. Moved by Mike, seconded by Paula, Sasha. All in favour say aye. Okay, carried, and then I'll do.
So we're in public excluded